Hey, welcome everybody. We're so glad that you came. As you're coming in, I got my friends Frankie and Brian here. We'll introduce them in a second, but we'd love to hear from you. Where are you joining us from? Maybe just get in the chat real quick, introduce yourself, and say what city you're coming from. There's people from all over that are joining us, so that's what's so fun about this incredible workshop that we have together. $1 Million Generosity. Who doesn't want to be a part of that workshop? Hey, Jenny, good to see you from North Dakota. We got Memphis in the
Let's go,
house.
Tennessee.
Hey, let's go.
Matthew Perry's in the house. All right.
All right. Kalamazoo. That's fantastic. I was stuck in Western Michigan and on 9/11. So there's bringing us back to 2001. Albuquerque in the house. We've got Tennessee again, Springfield, Missouri. Welcome.
I love Tennessee.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
Love it. Yeah.
North Carolina. By the way, we're coming to you here from Seattle. Brian is in Bellevue, Washington, and Frankie is in Southern France. So we're so global here. Our $1 million How to Steward High Impact Givers. What a wild journey.
Wow, they're pouring in.
Yeah, Lancaster, Wichita Falls, Texas.
It's fantastic.
Hey, I've heard that Connor down there in Tampa, it's already really hot in Florida, isn't it? But you know, what can we complain? You live in Florida. New Jersey. Well, hey, we're gonna get started. We'll keep greeting you all, and we're gonna have pretty much the entire time is Q&A. I'm gonna be introducing our guests here in a second, but I'm so grateful. We are so grateful here with the Overflow team that you came. Welcome. You're joining us for our $1 Million Generosity, How to Steward High Impact Givers. My name is Mark Venti, by the way, and I have the privilege of facilitating the session on behalf of the team here at Overflow. And frankly, we're just going to have a good time. Frankie is going to have a good time, and frankly, we're going to have a good time. This is more than a webinar, though. It's a space for honest conversation around one of the most powerful and personal parts of our spiritual lives, which is generosity. So today we're going to be hearing from these two great individuals, which I'll introduce in a moment, who have not only given significant financial gifts, but they've chosen to live generous lives. And they'll be sharing their stories, the turning points, the tensions, and the legacy they're building through this generous lifestyle. So whether you're a church leader looking to better engage with givers or a generous partner yourself, we believe this will be both inspiring and deeply practical. So let's jump into the conversation. Let me start off by introducing our two guests. I'll start off with Brian. I'm going to give a quick introduction and let him introduce himself. This is Brian Hopper, and he is a high-level real estate agent with an agency called Compass in the Northwest, and has moved millions and millions and millions of dollars of real estate, and also is that's his side job. His first job is building the church, and it loves the church. I've seen that firsthand personally. But Brian, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? We're so glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. If not, just wink. Give me 2 winks, Mark, and I'll slow down, let the bandwidth catch up. But I talk fast, so we'll try and keep up. But hey, yeah, I'm grateful you guys are all here. Thanks for hopping on. We're going to talk about generosity today. We're going to talk about what that looks like, how that plays out in the church, in the marketplace. It's something close to my wife, Nicole, and I. We've been married 22 years, and that's something we really founded our marriage on, that we set out to live generous lives. And I think that's what we have in common. And it's fun to see that play out. We have a 20-year-old son now, 16-year-old daughter, and teaching them that and passing that craft onto them has been a joy as well. So, Mark, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. I do have to share, Frankie and I are new friends. Brian and I are long-term friends. Brian was actually my COVID garage workout partner. So if you're wondering how he got those good looking muscles, I'm his trainer. So it's worked out well. But yeah, Brian lives what he preaches, and so I'm excited to hear his story. Frankie is a new friend, CEO of a marketing agency called Anomaly in New York City. Also, long-term, fully committed member at Fountain, New York City, and not only that, but a board member. And so, Frankie, why don't you real quickly jump on, introduce yourself? You're on the field yourself right now, so we're glad to have you here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me. And well, yeah, like you said, my name is Frankie. I'm a born and raised New Yorker. Still heartbroken about the next conversation for another day. I work at Anomaly. Been at the agency for 18 years now. Started as an account guy, so client services side of the business. Worked my way up. Eventually became a partner back in 2012. Had an amazing opportunity to move to Toronto, Canada in 2012 to start the company there. I went slightly begrudgingly because when you grow up in New York City, you think it's the center of the universe and you never want to leave New York to go anywhere. But it felt too good a professional opportunity not to go. So I went, and it was actually in that move and moving to Toronto for work that I probably would say I really double clicked in on my faith journey, because I didn't know at the time, but I had the opportunity in the move as I was building the agency from scratch to get plugged into a local church, C3 Toronto. Before they had even opened their doors, I was asked to join the ministry team and help them start the church. And I did that. And that really was the thing that I think helped me and my wife push into a much deeper level of faith in our own journey and walk. So I did that for 5 years. And then I moved back to New York in 2017. So I've been here for the last 8 years. I run our New York and Toronto offices. We do advertising for some brands like, mostly Fortune 100 brands. So Chevy, Top Golf, Johnny Walker, Starbucks, Visa, Target. So some pretty incredible brands. And then at the same time, I'm on the board of directors for our church, both in Toronto and New York. So been doing that for a long time and just have a real heart and passion for, being able to deliver what I believe is, kingdom honoring success, both in the spiritual sense as well as in the marketplace.
That's so good. And that is exactly why Frankie introduced himself. And we're honored to have you here with us. You kind of started to dabble into the first question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to that question for Brian to start off, and then we'll jump right in. Brian, tell us a little bit about your church journey. And, you've built an incredible business, but just tell us a little bit about your passion for the local church and, how that's connected to what you're building in business.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for asking. For us, I joined a global real estate brand 10 years ago. And at that same time, we relocated about an hour south of Seattle, up to a little town called Kirkland, and joined a church there with international reach. And at the same time, I joined that international real estate brand. So we had this on our heart, is to be connected globally. Because how many people know when you're connected globally, the world seems a lot smaller, and kind of like you said, Frankie, like you thought NYC was the center. You get out there and you realize it's a big world, but you start to know people everywhere. And we really felt and that God was putting on our heart to be connected, kind of parallel lines between the two, work and our church. And we went all in. Any church we've been a part of, we go all in. It's just what we do, and we don't really know anything else. I was born and raised in the church and have served in almost every capacity you can think of, from worship team. They only let me lead worship once, and that was probably a good thing. So they stuck me behind the drum set, which was a lot of fun. From a small church, I filled in at the sound booth, like whatever was needed, we did it. And I think there's no better place to be than a healthy functioning church body. There's no greater family, there's no greater organization, and just wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
That's awesome. Again, I just want to say welcome to everybody who's coming here, and I think you're in for a really rich time. hearing from Brian and Frankie, and coming from all over. Jonathan, see you joining us from Montgomery, Texas. And so I want to double down on what we already started in here, but I want to ask both of you about, is there a pivotal moment or a pivotal conversation that changed your approach to giving? And how did you recognize the gift of generosity in your life? Was there a moment where all of a sudden you realized, I think there's a calling on my life in this space of generosity? Was it a conversation? Was it a moment? Share part of your story.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to jump in. Well, look, I think
Yeah.
hearing Brian's story is pretty incredible, pretty inspiring. I think my story is probably a little bit different insofar as I think I probably first met the Lord when I was 14 years old, growing up in Queens, New York, and I got baptized as a young kid, and then had some, like a lot of folks, I guess, life happened, beat me up a little bit, a couple things that were not super awesome, and I definitely kind of walked away from the faith through my college years, and found myself in lots of places I happen to never have to go back to. And then, like a lot of good things for a lot of people, my life changed quite considerably when I met a girl. I met a woman
Hmm.
who I wanted to impress, and
Yeah,
faith was a big
that'll
part
do
of her
it.
life. Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. And we knew each other from being little kids. We had met in the church. She knew me when I was 13, and then we got back together maybe when we were 25. And it was actually her faith. We're at church, and I would be just real talk, right? Like I would say, growing up in the church, and then even when I started going back to church again in my mid-20s, giving was actually the one part of the whole, kind
Mm.
of walking with Christ that I struggled with, because I grew up in
Yeah.
my family are both first generation immigrants from Puerto Rico, and we grew up not having a lot. And so when you get
Wow.
to a place of
Hmm.
success and having some things, you try really hard to hold on to them. So this whole premise of giving away was not easy. And then for my then girlfriend, now wife, to see her spirit of generosity and everything, that was probably the moment that moved me to start to actually look at that part of our faith differently.
Yeah.
And and then we got married, right? When you go to marriage counseling, and they tell you, like, the biggest thing you need to do is like unity, right? Talk about how you're going to deal with conflict resolution, talk about how you're going to disciple and mentor others, talk about your finances and how you're going to commit. And it was in that conversation with my wife, I said, look, I'm really nervous. This was about 2009, and we were in the midst of this insane recession, right? Post 9/11, 2008,
Yep.
2009. For those of you old enough might remember, like, the economy in America was rough. And so I said to my wife, I'm worried, and I think we need to stop tithing
Mm.
10%,
Wow.
because I haven't gotten a raise in 2 years, and they're about to ask everyone who earns over a certain amount to take a pay cut. And therefore, like, I don't think we can keep doing, and she said, well, it's not really a choice. And,
Hmm.
she basically challenged me, and she said, you get really specific with God. If you want to really understand if you're letting him be the Lord in all of the aspects of our life, you have to get really specific about him, about,
Yeah.
where you're at and what you want. And so I prayed at the time really specifically. I said, okay, well then I'm going to ask. And at the time I thought, this was nuts. I said, I'm going
Wow.
to $25,000 raise in the midst of this recession and all this.
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short is I met with my boss, who's a older British guy. He's a bit intimidating, and I was pretty nervous, even to, in the midst of the macro context of knowing the company wasn't doing that well financially, to just like, and I'm going in there thinking I need to ask for this thing. And he says, hey, by the way, you've been doing a phenomenal job, and I'm just want to tell you, I'm not going to ask you to take a pay cut. We're actually going to give you a raise. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't awesome. I don't
Yeah.
even need to ask.
Wow.
And then he said, we're going to give you a $20,000 raise. And I said,
Wow.
oh my God, that's incredible. It's so generous. Thank you so much. I'm really honored. And then, but in my head, I'm going, man, I had 25,000 as a number, and this is 20,000. So whatever this whole thing my wife was talking about is nuts. And then he goes, and because you've helped build the company from the ground up, we're going to give you a $5,000 bonus, which is
Nice.
exactly 25,000. And then he said, and then because we're launching this IP brand, I'm going to give you 1% ownership in the brand. And for
Wow.
me, I took away, like, this is the exact thing of God will always meet you at your need
Hmm.
and do more than you would have ever expected for yourself. And that was probably the time, well, not probably, was the time where you went, I'm no longer going to be closed-fisted about anything. I'm no longer going to see
Yeah.
giving as a optional part of our faith relative to how everything else is going, but I'm going to prioritize that because, you know, this is how we're kind of called to live. So that was the big
Wow.
turn.
That's so good.
What an incredible story. And I love one thing we pull out of that is you married the right person. So that's huge.
Seriously.
And also you had a moment where that conviction really became yours and it was tested. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't easy. It was a difficult moment, but then you
Yeah.
saw on the other side going, whoa, I'm going to live with this conviction. That's incredible. Brian, what
Yeah.
about you? What was a pivotal moment for you?
Yeah. And just dovetailing too, I mean, I think Frankie, that's a dangerous prayer of what you prayed there. And he showed you exactly to the dollar amount,
Yeah.
how big he is. And I think God tells us that, Mark, is like, and I think you and I have talked about this, Mark, is he reminds me of, why would you think I'm not that big? Like, why would you underestimate me, or even think I'm not that big to bless you with that corner office? And I'm not getting like prosperity preaching, but I'm just saying, like, I think sometimes we don't have because we don't ask, right? And when you ask even specifically, and he answers specifically, I mean, talk about a faith building exercise.
Yeah.
And the other part too, I would just say, anyone who's out there listening who's not married, or it has that person in their sights, like that was key, what Frankie said about starting off right, Mark, like in the beginning, where it's
Mhm.
discussed, like, we are going to tithe, because especially if you're young and
Yeah.
married, you start out when it's maybe potentially smaller paychecks, and then the paychecks get bigger, the zeros add on, and you keep with that because that's what you've always done.
Yeah.
It's powerful,
Mhm.
especially when you choose to not even just do the minimum, when you choose to maybe at some point even give away more than you keep, like reverse the 90-10, right?
Mhm.
So powerful stuff though. Mark, what was your question though? Say that again.
My ask for you, same, is
Yeah.
what was a pivotal moment? What
Yeah.
was it a conversation? What's something that changed your approach to giving for your personal life?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think what pivotal moments for me was, similarly, Frankie, like going through the recession. I mean, that was challenging, especially in the real estate industry. We had to really make some pivots and figure out what we're doing here. But there was one thing that we didn't waver on, was the fact that we were giving it. Wasn't our highest giving years during those times, but when you get through that, you've gone through that battle, and you're battle tested, right? You're battle ready, and it's like, all right, well, what you got next? Like, we'll take it, and we'll persevere. So I think really, Mark, it's continually just living out that act of worship through giving, and not stopping. I mean, it's just been something that's so second nature to us.
Mhm.
And I'm blessed with my bride and I of 22 years that we don't argue about money. And people, we all know the stats, that that's the number one thing spouses argue about. And I do believe
Mhm.
that's why. And I think it's a byproduct of our generous spirit through our active tithing, that keeps that conversation even out of like our daily life.
Mm.
Um, and we hardly even talk about it. It's pretty
Yeah,
phenomenal. So
that's really good.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and I think what you're talking about is making a decision up front. I actually recently heard
yeah,
that Barna, if you're familiar with who Barna is, researched what was the main trigger for people that were tithing, and what he actually came to conclusion was they started tithing when they were younger.
yeah,
Um, and so before you both were
totally.
making more money, before, and by the way, when you make more money, it doesn't make it easier because you're giving away larger numbers.
It's
um,
harder. It's harder.
it's
Yeah,
harder. It's harder. But
right,
starting
right.
that and learning how to give in the beginning is what
Yeah,
it laid the foundation. So let's talk more about
yeah,
that risk here for a second. I want to lean into this question. And by the way, for everybody listening, first off, thank you again for joining us. We're gonna have some Q&A time as part of our time, or Q&R. Maybe that we don't have answers, but we got some responses. Uh, and we'll have that. But if you have questions as we're going, don't feel hesitant to put them in the chat right now. We're conversational people, so we love to
yeah,
answer them as we go. But
Yeah, and if you're new, hop on. Tell us where you're coming from too. I'd love to see where you're listening from.
yeah, I'd love to hear about a large gift. You don't need to talk about the number, but part of this is we have a lot of people that lead organizations that are with us, lead churches, lead nonprofits, and are wanting to know what it's like from the seat you sit in. How did you deal with the risk or the fear or that internal opposition with giving a large gift? What was that like? Tell us a little bit about the internal wrestle there.
Frankie, you want to take that one first?
Sure. Well, yeah, I can think of a very specific moment. So I had already shared this story a little bit, right? The journey. So both my wife and I, native New Yorkers, born and raised, and then we moved to Toronto at the time. They said, go to Toronto for 2 years and then you come back. Well, 2 years turned into 3, turned into 4, turned into 5. So we were up there for 5 years. We helped build the church and plant the church and all the things. And when it was time for me to move back to New York, it was 2017. And I had a small equity piece of the agency that I built in Toronto. And so I moved back to New York, and as part of my deal, we sold the agency to a holding company. And so I got a payout. Again, it was not a major amount of money, but it was meaningful sum of money, certainly more than I'd ever earned. But I had already moved back to the US because 2017, and I got paid in July of that year. And but it was for the 5 years that I was in Canada, right? And the 5 years in Canada, like I'd already shared, was definitely transformational for my personal faith in the relationship with my wife and I. And I discover at the time, and my accountant, who is Christian, tells me, you can't tithe this money to the church in Canada because it won't be a tax write-off. You can tithe it to the church you now go to in New York, which, by the way, was part of the same global movement. It's all part of C3. So I moved from C3 Toronto to, at the time, C3 Brooklyn. So he's going, so you need to tie that money to C3 Brooklyn because that's a US-based nonprofit, and then we can write it off in your taxes. And it felt wrong because in my mind I said, well, everything that I earned in the last 5 years was when I was living in Canada.
Wow.
And I feel really strongly I need to tie this to the church we were going to while we lived there. And it was really hard because it goes a big enough amount of money that the tax write-off would have been significant. So you got either give this to the place I was called to serve in the most transformative part of my faith walk and get no money back when I do the taxes, right? Or I still honor God and give it to the church, but I do it over here. And then I still get sort of this tax benefit. And it was this wrestle for about a week because, it's like when you do a debate, when you're like, I'm going to argue both sides. I'm going to argue for and I'm going to argue against. And when you argue against, you just go, in the end, it's the same. It's going to God, right? It's left pocket, right pocket. He doesn't care. But there was a sense of honor and respecting that, the breakthrough for me in my life happened over there. And therefore I needed to sow in over there, even if it meant I was not going to get back as much. And so in the end, we concluded we're going to give that full amount to C3 Toronto.
Yeah.
We had already left the country 6 months before that. And wouldn't you know, we do it. And the pastor at the time called me 3 weeks later and said, hey, that gift you and your wife just gave is going to allow us to now underwrite completely our second location
No
outside of
way.
downtown Toronto. We're going to open our second doors. And now, wouldn't
Wow.
you know, one of the couples who really, came into the church and became very active at the time in that location that we helped, open, is now, it's 2017, 9 years later, leaving to go plant a church in Mexico City.
That's
And
awesome.
that to me is this incredible representation of when you are faithful and obedient to where
Yeah.
you are confident God has given you the call, as opposed to making, because some people would just go faith and wisdom. You have to do both. And this is the wise thing. I mean, I had a Christian accountant saying this is still okay, but not compromising what you believe is the right thing in your heart. So
That's so good.
hopefully that
That's incredible.
there. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that story. Brian, what about you? What was a challenge or risk moment in giving a large gift?
Mark, that's a great question. And I think similar to Frankie with that is I can't think of a specific example with a large gift, but here's something recently on a recent larger tithe check, and this comes from like 48 years of being churched and different a part of different organizations is regardless of what happens. Like there's been just a lot of different in the media, different either scandals or this pastor's now in jail for this or on trial for this. Like no matter what state you're in, there's some megachurch pastor that's in trouble, whatever it is. Fortunately, that's not what our church here pursued in the Northwest. But regardless of what happens, we gave that money from an open heart, and
Yep.
it's not on us, so to speak.
Yep.
Um, Giving in the sense of like maybe they won't build that gym. Maybe it's I mean, who remembers the Raise the Roof campaigns to the church you grew up in? Like everyone's been a part of the church where there's like a Raise the Roof or we're building the gym. I could tell you it takes sometimes 40 years to build that expansion. And you may be 3 churches removed, but you gave to the kingdom and God had your heart, and it broke like a spirit of what's it called, mammon? Is that right, Mark? Like
Yep.
you didn't have the money didn't have a hold of you, right? You had a hold of it because God had a hold of you. And so, like I guess my point in summary again is, regardless of what happens with it, like you
Okay.
gave, and that's the only thing you can control, right? Is that you followed His obedience and that you gave. So
You gave to God. You didn't give
you gave
to
to
an
God.
organization, a person, and that's part of where the trust is.
That's
And
right.
by the way, Frankie just discovered that you're 48, Brian, and
My man.
I think it's important that we notify the fact that you are eternally young. So that's
Well,
great.
thank you so much. I appreciate
If,
that. It's all creatine water. No.
if, if this wasn't a Christian live stream, I'd say you sold your soul. I mean, this guy, I mean, it's 48. It's amazing.
I appreciate you, brother. Much love.
Okay, I want to shift some of the questions here that I think will be really applicable to the people that are here with us. That again are leading churches, leading organizations. Um, what type of information do you look for from a church or somewhere you're giving to support your decision to give there? So think of a moment where there was a big ask, or you had an opportunity. Maybe you're at a fundraising event and
Mm.
you felt compelled to give. What type of information is it that gives you this place of going, yeah, I'm in, I want to give? What's tease you up for that? Is it inspiration? Is it tactical information? What type of stuff helps you to give? Brian, why
Great.
don't you start? Kick this one off.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. I mean, I wish I could say super spiritual, like I heard from the Lord. Like I prayed that He wore red Jordans and He showed up in some AJs, right? Like, but that's not who I am particularly. I try to be, but I feel like it's a couple things. It depends on, I guess, who's the ask. Like, what's my connection with the ask? Um, and then I'll pray about it. Usually, I'll figure out what it is and then pray it up and make sure there's peace. And then the big part, as a married guy, is make sure my wife feels the same. We have a little more latitude now to do different things. Like I just donated amount to an auction coming up for this athlete event in Seattle here, and didn't check with her, and she'll be fine with it, right? But it's, I will say this, it's so powerful when you're on the same page as your
Yeah.
spouse with, I think, any financial donation, rather than just telling them here's what I did, but bringing them in at the ground level up. So I think, yeah, Mark, for me it's who's asking, what it supports, and then
Hmm.
do I have peace about it after prayer.
That's great. Great.
Yeah,
So
and
who's
I'm not
asking?
talking like 5 days to pray about it either.
Yeah.
Not like I'll pray about it and then you get back a week later, when really they didn't even think about it until like a day before getting back to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really good. Frankie, what about you? What are you looking for from a church leader of sorts that is key to
Yeah.
you as you're partnering financially?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. I think I would co-sign everything Brian said there. I guess the one thing I would add is separate. There's two questions, right? That I think sometimes people conflate, and it's like it's the American consumerism mentality, right? Like you decide whether or not you're going to give based on the message you're receiving. And I think those are two separate decisions, right? Like you should pray about if you are going to give, and then the second choice is where and how much, right? So just
Right.
I don't think those two should be, done together. And then I think, like, we say often again at Fountain, like, here's the vision, but the vision needs provision. You need to put provision behind the vision. So I think you just need to feel compelled in, what it is, this. I mean, we're called, right, to be the hands and feet of Christ. That is the job of the local church. And so you just go, in what way is this lowercase c church going to activate? And as though that's something that speaks to my heart. So I just think that's what I look for, is like real transparency. And here's how we plan to use, right, what the congregation is able to give. I think I saw a question in the chat, which I thought was an excellent question, right? Looking to
like it.
fundraise a large amount of money in 3 to 6 months. Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
have
that's a good
any
question.
suggestions? Like, we found really, really helpful in our church, and I'm sure there are others. I'm a big believer in frameworks, right? Again, marketing, advertising, company frameworks, right? So we had this framework that we came up with years ago at our church, which was our church, our city, our world. And so we would have a few different initiatives within the church. Hey, we need to upgrade our sound equipment because we know that worship is a big way people walk through the doors. So we are looking to raise $2 million this year. This X 100,000 is going to go to sound equipment and the app. Then you go, our community. We are looking to feed the homeless. The homeless is a big problem in New York City. We're going to feed the homeless. So our ambition this year is to carve out $200,000 to go to urban gardens, where we're going to plant 15 rooftop gardens across Brooklyn and raise the harvest and use that to field shelters. Our world, we are going to partner with this church in Cabo Delgado, Africa, and anti-sex. And I loved it because it spoke to different people. So I have my sister-in-law who moved to Florida, who doesn't attend our church, but she has a heart for women, big heart. She has 4 daughters. And she goes, I saw that prison ministry, sex trafficking thing your church is supporting. I want to give. And so so I just found that that's a helpful way, is to not go, we're looking to raise $2 million for the building fund. And it's there. Even if that is the primary need of the church in that season, is look to have enough of a story to speak to the heart of people that align with their own personal values, if that makes sense.
I love what you shared, Frankie, is you're speaking to two things: giving people different on-ramps because people have different passions, but also it was very specific. It wasn't like, like you're on the street corner in New York and somebody opens up their trench coat and they're like, what do you want? There's 5,000 different options. It's like there was 2 to 3 to 4 options. They were very clear. There was a clear number behind it. And different people are going to give to different things. And I love that was your experience. I think a big recommendation, Matthew was when he put that question out, as you're planning on planting the church, being really specific and really clear and giving people different on-ramps to give to different things that are a part of the church planting space.
Absolutely.
That's right. And I'd even go one step. I'd even go one step further. Sorry, just a real quick one is, and if you can, visualize it for people. So we had, last year, 2 years ago now, is when we really pushed into purchase property in New York City. Now, it's very expensive to own space in New York City. And we knew we needed a big number to achieve it. And so we decided at that year's Vision Builders, we were going to 3D print a version of the space we wanted to purchase.
That's awesome.
And how we were going to renovate it. And then based on the end of the night, depending on how many pledges came in, we visualized how much of that space we were able to complete. And it was really moving for people to go, hang on a minute. If they get another $20,000, they can complete the kids' ministry room. Oh my God. I mean, I have a heart for kids' ministry. I'm doing it.
Let's do it.
So
let's do it.
Yeah, right. Versus if you just go, we need $2 million to make the church happen. It's just too ephemeral for people. And so I think specificity, clarity, and visualizing it is just really powerful. We found.
Yeah, and Frankie, you know what? You're actually quoting Habakkuk. Habakkuk, did I say that right?
Amazing.
Mark, Habakkuk 2. Yeah, so Habakkuk 2:2, right?
Yeah.
Okay, listen to what this says. So write the vision and make it plain upon tablets, right? So a clear vision will attract resource. If you're
Mhm.
not clear, or if the vision continually is changing and your messaging is not consistent, then you're not going to attract resource. I mean, it's that plain and simple.
Mm.
You have to have a clear vision. You have to give clear explanations and then have clear on ramps to giving.
Yep.
Or else it just won't happen. It doesn't matter pre or
Wow.
post. It just will not happen.
Yeah.
And if you
That's
stray
really
from
good.
that, or if the language comes from, I think it also has to come from a place of that it's not an unrealistic number, meaning that whoever it is presenting it with the ask can't gasp with the rest of the crowd when the number is spoken. It
Yeah.
has to be something that is
Hmm.
confidently stated that this is not going to be an issue. Um, and truly, I mean, from the top down, you have to have that generous spirit. So
Yeah.
I would, search your organizations from the top down, and ensure that your leadership is generous themselves and actually living what they're preaching. So
That's really good. We have 10 minutes left, and we're starting to get some questions coming in here. So
let's
what
do
I
it.
want to do in moving forward here is try to fire these off. I'll give different questions to the two of you, and we'll try to
Yeah, rapid fire.
yeah, rapid fire. I want to also mention Habakkuk in the message that I thought was really cool is it says it that write it in big bubble letters so when you run,
Yeah,
people can read it. And what I love about that is business people like yourselves are running. Like you're moving fast.
yeah,
And
that's a good
when the
point.
vision clear that you can still read it while you're moving fast, that's what people will give to. And
Totally. Yeah.
I think what I'm picking up here, which I just want to say this, ask this question, it's really a yes or no question. But what I'm hearing you say, Frankie, is you wanted to give, you just needed to know, oh, 20 grand to finish the kids area, I'm in. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
am I correct? Like, you're kind of in a
Yes.
sense waiting for people to give you a clear opportunity of something you're passionate about.
100% yes.
That's good. Yeah.
That's so good.
So people are waiting out there, guys. People are waiting for you to give them clear direction. They're already passionate. They're already
Yeah,
passionate. They just need to know exactly what it is, what you're giving to. I love that how they broke it down like that. So,
that's great. Okay, Brian, quick
sir.
answer here. This is from Daryl. Um, do you look for? I think it's asking. Do you look for prospects? So in other words, the second question is: are you more likely to support a church pre-launch or post-launch, and why?
Mm. I would say post launch, because I want to see that grit. I want to see that grind. And I want to see the team that is doing the launch, like put in the hours to get it going, and then I'll back it up.
That's awesome. And to your point, I'll just say everybody's different. So if you're pre-launch and you're like, well, shoot, I'm trying to
Yeah.
raise money right now, like it depends on the giver. That's Brian's answer.
Is this post
Others are
trip,
like,
pre trip type stuff? I mean, it shouldn't
yeah,
be
yeah,
that.
right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. Okay, Frankie. Catherine put in here, and Catherine, thank you for sharing your vulnerable personal story, and that God's used that to start something new. You're asking here. You're curious about stewarding high impact givers to your cause. Let me just ask you, Frankie, in general, how can the church best uh, steward you as a giver?
Mm.
How do you feel connected? How do you feel like you want to continue to give? How do you feel like it's more than giving money? How can leaders of organizations like Catherine,
Yeah.
really connect with you on multiple levels?
Well, look, I'm going to be very biased in my answer given my profession, right? But the reason I was drawn to marketing and advertising is I'm a creative spirit, and I'm a big believer in the power of story, right? I'm
Hmm.
obsessed with storytelling in all formats, right?
Love that.
There's an old proverb that says, "Tell me a fact and I'll listen. Tell me the
Yeah.
truth and I'll learn. Tell me a story and it'll stay in my heart forever." And
Mm,
I
Hmm.
feel like
true.
if you can
It's good.
tell a good story, you can speak to someone's heart, whether
Yeah.
it's pre-church or post-church. So it's a roundabout answer, but I think it's the truth. So whether if it's a very specific cause like the one I saw in the church about and I'm so sorry for your loss, someone who passed away in a car accident. It doesn't matter how specific or how broad, you have to figure out a way how to communicate that story in a way that reaches people's hearts. It sounds very simple and cliche, but I believe it's 100% true, right?
Yeah.
And there was another question, right? Like, how do you get people to share their stories? One of the things I love, again, in our church, is they committed a long time ago. We call them my stories. And so
Oh, that's cool.
every single Sunday from the stage, I'm sure church has innovated in many ways, but it feels like the general service structure, right? Worship, announcements, preach. Announcements, you have a giving moment. We would always play a my story. And a my story was just some member in the congregation, about a 3-minute video piece of them sharing their personal journey. We would batch them. So you get 5 or 6 people on a Sunday or a weekend to record them, and then you roll them out every week. And I
Yeah.
found that was the absolute best way to keep people motivating to play that video piece every Sunday after the giving and offering moment, because it
Mhm.
made it tangible
Yeah.
for, right? So if it's pre-church or post-church, you just go, oh, the money I'm deciding to give or not is actually making this happen. It's actually helping that
Yeah.
person who just shared their story about, being a single mom, or that person who, and that's all people need. They just need a story. They need to feel connected to knowing that what they're contributing towards is actually making a difference versus it going into the vapor,
That's good.
That's all. Callie's question that you just mentioned too, Frankie, is, what happens if we're trying to get people to tell their story, but people aren't offering their stories? And I'll just throw out, Callie, in general in church, the more that is just relational and boots on the ground,
Mhm.
rather than kind of the air raid of like, hey, send us an email. And what I'm trying to say is take people out to
Yeah,
coffee,
thousand
ask them their
percent,
story,
Yeah.
thousand
spend
percent.
time with people, people that you know or you've heard of, and those individual. That's where stories are going to come from, and that's where people want
Yeah.
to share the story because they're actually connecting on a personal level too. Um,
That's a great point, Mark. That's a great
yeah,
point.
Tony from a great church. Good to have you here, Tony. Um, a good question. I think this is asking the two of you who tithe, but also give above and beyond your tithe. How is that giving spirit cultivated to help people stretch above and beyond their tithe? And as a leader of an organization, or specifically a church, how do you help go after those people and help develop that in your church?
That's great.
Brian, how's that work for
That's
you?
great. Well, I think, yeah.
Oh, Frankie,
Ye-
you're jumping in. Go for it.
No. Brian, go free. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to it's. I would say there's a little bit of not peer pressure and not necessarily social pressure, but when you get into small groups, you get to know and you get into relationships, and you realize, hey, everyone's doing it. Everyone actually does this tithing thing. Everyone actually does this offering thing. Um, and that's a big one. Like once people realize that it's actually is lived out, because like in our church we pass the buckets type of thing, and I think maybe one person per row put something in it. And so like if you aren't really in community, you may not know that everyone is actually giving. So getting people in community, getting them in small groups, and then of course a company, shout out to Overflow, for the different ways that they provide giving to happen, is huge. And you really don't know that other people are doing it until you're in relationship.
That's
That's
really good.
exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I would add there is just reinforcing where you just ended, Brian, and you alluded
Yeah.
to it earlier, Mark, is relationship,
Mm.
Yeah.
like meaningful relationship. And sometimes, just
Yes.
like any organization would do, it's not manipulative to identify potential high impact givers and go
Yeah.
out of your way to build a relationship with them. That is not
Totally.
manipulative. That is not spiritual, anything other than being smart and going. So there was a question, I think, Michael McKinney, about a
Mhm.
potential very big giver in the church, and you go play the long game. The objective
Yeah.
wouldn't be to figure out how to get them to put some of their financial investments in the church tomorrow. It is, what's the most genuine and authentic way I can build a relationship with this person so that
Right.
over time he will be desperate to invest in what we are building here, because
So
the vision we have, like the model I shared, right? The city, church, world speaks
Yeah.
so closely to his personal vision. And then it's like the checks will write themselves, as opposed to, I just think sometimes we're so quick moving, so relationship, right? Our pastor up in Toronto used to do, and I thought it was crazy at the time. And then I realized how smart and incredible it was. He started a ministry called Bibles and Biceps, where it was just like a very early morning,
I'm in.
early morning work. Yeah, very early morning workout, and then like CrossFit, and then you'd go and talk about the word from Sunday. But he was
Yeah.
very selective about who was in that small group, and it was business folks who were a little bit close-fisted, and
Yeah.
eventually that small group of people ended up probably giving about 30 to 40% of the church's finances over a 3 or 4 year window. So it was all relationship. He didn't ask for anything, he gave, and as a result, people were moved to push in deeper.
Yeah.
We
Literally like push in, like, right. Press. How about press in, squat in?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
we
Awesome.
we unfortunately, this has been so rich. Want to be thoughtful of everybody's time and need to wrap up here. I want to say, Michael, because you added to Frankie's response here. Two thoughts I'll give you when it comes to communicating, even to somebody you don't know. Number one,
Yeah.
it's already been said. Vision. Hey, if I'm sending an email to Frankie, we literally met today.
Yeah.
Frankie, a friend of mine told me about you. I've heard about you. I've heard about who you are and what you're doing. And first off, it's remarkable. And I want to give you opportunity to know about what we're doing. Can I share quickly? About a vision and see if you have any interest in being a part of this. So basically, sharing a vision, and then something I've heard from somebody I highly respect is help make individuals rich where they are poor. And just because
That's
people
great.
have money doesn't mean there's not some area in their life where they are lacking, where they have need. And mining out to find those areas and to make them rich where they are poor is a huge place where, like Frankie said, they will be desperate to give. So as we're wrapping up, Brian's already turned his camera off and everything. I first off want to thank everybody for showing up and joining us, but specifically Frankie and Brian, thank you for taking the time out of your day. Literally, I know their schedule. I don't need to give it, but they are jumping in between different things going on. So thank you massively for joining us. And for everybody tuning in, I hope this has sparked new thinking, not just about giving, but about partnership, vision, discipleship, high impact generosity. It's not just about numbers. It's about legacy and alignment and vision and connection. And this is, by the way, just the beginning. We've been doing different versions of workshops, but we're starting a generosity workshop series, and we'd love to invite you to stay connected with the Overflow and join us for future sessions. So again, thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Frankie and Brian, thank you for joining us. And it was so great that you took time out of your day to join us. Have a good one, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Best.